the major mindset shift that happened for me is realizing that business in money is not the opposite of service. It's what allows service to continue. So I think in our industry, people often think that a good business or a successful studio and having money means that it's less authentic yoga, or that there's someone taking it away from everybody else. It's not real. I don't know. I actually completely disagree, and I've seen this happen in my studio, because when the business is healthy, now teachers can get paid. The studio can stay open. I have a beautiful community where people can gather and do amazing things together.
Welcome to Gift Led, where we unpack how our unique gifts are the key to a sustainable, impactful career and a meaningful life. I'm Tara Alprin. This week, I got to sit down with Shannon McCasland. I am so excited for y'all to get to hear this interview. I wanted her to be part of this ecosystem of what we talk about in this show, because we hear so many frustrations from especially yoga teachers, but also yoga studio owners about yoga studios not working that well and how that impacts our pay and our ability to have sustainable careers, whether that's teachers or also studio owners. And Shannon's work is all about uplifting yoga studio owners and ultimately uplifting the possibilities for the future of the yoga industry. So Shannon is the owner of Radiance Yoga in Massachusetts. She's also the creator and lead coach of American Yoga Council's Studio Business Accelerator. She believes that great teachers need great studios and great studios need great teachers. I think her thought process is so needed right now, and I'm so excited for y'all to hear what we dive into. We dove into tons of topics, but some of them we talked about how leadership is really missing from studio owners. And the more that studio owners can start to really lead, the more that will change our ability to have successful careers, both the studios and the teachers. We talk about how to build a successful yoga brand through standards and support and ongoing education. We talk about why it's so important that yoga studio owners have one role and why yoga teachers have a different role and what those roles look like. And then we talk about how money and business are essential to serving people well. So I hope you enjoy. I hope this inspires you and helps you broaden your view about what is possible in the yoga industry. Enjoy. Okay, welcome, Shannon. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to get to have this conversation with you because, like we've talked about, I spend most of my time talking to yoga teachers, and as yoga teachers, we're all seeing a big opportunity for studios to upgrade what they're doing and do better. And that's your whole work. And I'm really excited to hear all your thoughts on yoga industry and what is needed and all the things about how to run a studio well and how to be a leader and what money is. So I'm so excited to hear your perspective because I spent so much time talking to yoga teachers, and I think this is a really needed conversation. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you so much for having the other side of the perspective on here. And, I started as a teacher myself, so I feel very connected to all the conversations you're having, and I'm just really happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of that, let's take us back to the beginning. How did you start as a yoga teacher?
Yeah, so I started when I was 18 years old in college. I was teaching at my college recreation center, and then every studio, gym, everywhere around that would hire me. And that led into, I never had a career really outside of yoga and fitness. So after college, I was teaching, like I was the teacher that had a suitcase of mats in my trunk, and I taught at every studio. I taught at a resort full time. I taught at every corporate setting I could get into. Anything I could do, I was just hustling. And I think that this thought occurs to a lot of us. Well, maybe if I could just own the studio, then that would solve everything. But the problem is it actually just made everything a lot harder, and it actually just multiplied the chaos that was my life. So, yeah, I think through years of business ownership and leadership and doing a lot of things wrong, I learned how to do things right, and everything changed. So I do still identify myself as a yoga teacher, but even more so as a studio owner because I don't really teach much these days. What I'm really passionate about right now is the opportunity to help other studios become healthier businesses, because that's the gap in our industry, is that studios aren't healthy. So then how can we provide sustainable careers for teachers?
Exactly. And that's why I was so excited to get to talk to you, because so many yoga teachers have that sentiment of studios aren't healthy, but we don't see so many examples like yourself of somebody being really thoughtful about how to run a studio. So there's so much throwing your hands up and saying, well, forget the studios. And I think it's so important, the thing that you stand behind and that you said a lot, that great teachers need great studios and great studios need great teachers. So how did you come to believe that? Maybe kind of take us back to what you did wrong as a studio owner and how you started the studio. What was your first studio like? What was the chaos like? What got you to that statement?
Yeah, so I approached it from the beginning from just my experience as a teacher, that the the teachers are showing up and they're teaching the classes, and that's all that there is to a yoga studio, right? One of the biggest gaps, like I said, is we've been spending decades creating amazing yoga teachers, but there's nobody out there really leaning into making sure that our studio owners know how to lead studios. Most yoga studio owners are incredible teachers, but the problem is they're not trained in how to run a business, and that's not their fault. But what I learned along the way is that I needed to stop running my yoga studio like a teacher, and I needed to take ownership of my new job was running a business and leading people, and I needed to learn that. So most studio owners don't know about leadership and finances and marketing and hospitality and HR and how to lead a culture, all the things that really go into this. They simply love yoga. Now, this becomes really, really hard when I experienced this myself. I realized I needed to try to learn all of these things like a crash course in business that you can't get even at a college or anywhere else. I was trying to learn those things while simultaneously supporting myself and supporting other teachers that were relying on me. And that was a lot of pressure. Like it broke me. Like it definitely burnt me out as a studio, as a yoga teacher and a yoga studio owner. But I think looking back, it's understandable that we don't know these skills, but the problem is it's creating a difficult environment for teachers to work in. So it's also understandable when teachers are frustrated that they also don't have a sustainable career. For me, what I've come to realize in my work with now with American Yoga Council and everything I'm doing is, just like we have these certification standards for teachers, we also need leadership standards for studios. And that's really where I am today. And what I'm hoping to do on my side of American Yoga Council is providing resources to studio owners so they know what the best practices are. What are the industry standards for leadership and member experience and finances and marketing and teacher pay, the hot topic we all want to talk about. So I guess I guess I forgot the original question, but I think I went from chaotic teacher thinking I could run a yoga studio to realizing like Okay, there's a whole bunch of other stuff here that is actually owning a yoga studio, and none of it is teaching, unfortunately.
I think that's so right. That's exactly what I see is there's not a lot of people who are business minded starting studios. There's a lot of very passionate yoga teachers starting studios, but those are two really different skill sets.
Yeah.
And so of course there's a gap, and I think it's frustrating because everyone's so well intentioned, but that's why somebody like you coming in is so helpful, because just because everyone's so well intentioned doesn't mean that they have the skills that are needed to make all of this operate well. I do really want to get into all the things that you do as far as thinking about leadership, thinking about money, thinking about standards for studios. But first, how did you start your studio? I think so many people would be interested to know, how did you start it? What did it look like in the beginning? And then my next question that I'll just give to you now
Yeah.
is, how did you find business skills? You're like a unicorn that somehow found these things. How did you
Yeah.
find them?
Well, so I actually was a teacher at my studio and I purchased it. I did my official yoga teacher training. I did at Radiance Yoga. I became a teacher, a very part-time teacher. I had another job. And then one day the studio went up for sale and I was interested in owning my own business. I always thought that was the path I was on, not because I knew how to run a business, but because I am kind of unemployable and I just like to do my own thing. So I just raised my hand and I said, I want to buy the studio. And it's just kind of crazy. I was younger, so I really just had no pause to even think about the decision I was making. I just did it. And like I said, it was chaotic. I didn't know what I was doing. I think most of what I've learned in business has come from trial and error and time. And I think that I now love the fact that I can accelerate somebody else's success because they don't have to trial and error. I can just give them the journey, the exact pathway to follow. But I've also invested in business coaches myself. I've followed other studios, other coaches, other people in the industry. I've picked up a lot from them. I listen to podcasts every day. So it's like create your own, MBA type thing and just digesting all of the information I could get my hands on. And eventually things just started to click. And I think most importantly, through leadership at my studio, my team started to trust me so that I was able to put all of these new ideas into practice, which made it all possible.
Yeah. So you must have had some mentality that was distinct. Did you have monetary goals or goals for the way the team operated? Why did you work so hard to get the studio to work like this?
I do think part of it was fueled by my desire to make careers actually real in the yoga industry, not only for myself, but for other people. A lot of it was driven personally by need. Like I couldn't keep not paying myself or spending my personal savings to keep the studio working every month. And a lot of it was also burnout. I was burnt out. I couldn't maintain the daily operations the way that they were. And I needed to put systems and team into place for me to ever think about getting married, having children, doing all the things I wanted to do. That wasn't going to be possible if I were opening the studio every morning, working a full time job all day, closing the studio every night, and then trying to run the business at midnight on my laptop in bed. Like that was never going to work. So I think there was a lot of personal need in there, but also a lot of it was fueled by my experience as a yoga teacher and kind of being like, this is bullshit. We need to be able to make careers out of this. So I have to make a system that works.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's why I relate to you so much, because I do the same thing, but by helping people with personal brands. But it's the same idea of, I love teaching yoga. I love yoga, that yoga exists in the world. I want it to exist as a career for me, and I want it to exist for other people. And it's this hard headed, like, I will make this happen. And
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, people quit because it just doesn't seem possible. But I'm so excited about just the way you think about this and that you're running a really well run studio just to say, no, hey, everyone, yoga careers can work. It can work.
Yeah, I think that was my first motivation is I wanted to prove to yoga teachers that they could make this a full-time career or some kind of even a meaningful side hustle, is important. Because if we're being honest, I do think a lot of people don't necessarily want a full-time career. A lot of people, at least at my studio, they're happy with it being their side gig, and that's awesome, but they need to feel like it's worth their time and they're supported in that as well. And now, as a studio owner, kind of the same thing, but in a different way. I feel like I used to think, oh, a yoga studio just can't make money. This must be the ceiling. I feel like the studio's growing, but like I still can't pay myself. So I guess this is just it. This is just going to be my life. And this is never going to work. And now, yeah, that's my whole message is I want studios to know what is possible so that they stop throwing in the towel or they stop just deciding this is the way it is and they realize that there's a different way to run and succeed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Okay, so we've heard this a cajillion times. Yoga studios can't make money. It's just not possible. They're not designed to do it. You shouldn't even make money teaching yoga.
Oh my
Blah, 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 blah. What are your
God.
thoughts?
Oh my gosh. I think one of my least favorite and most favorite conversations is the conversation about yoga, teaching yoga and making money. I think I've had my own issues with this, tried to like hide behind, like, not wanting to admit that I want to make money doing this, teaching yoga or owning a studio for sure. But the major mindset shift that happened for me is realizing that business in money is not the opposite of service. It's what allows service to continue. So I think in our industry, people often think that a good business or a successful studio and having money means that it's less authentic yoga or that like, there's someone taking it away from everybody else. It's not real. I don't know. I actually completely disagree, and I've seen this happen in my studio because when the business is healthy, now teachers can get paid. The studio can stay open. I have a beautiful community where people can gather and do amazing things together. The owner, myself, my staff, my teachers, they can avoid burnout. And the students on the end of all of this, which I think, we don't want to forget about, now they're receiving an amazing, consistent experience. And the world is a better place because more people are practicing yoga. And then at the end of all of that, we're creating more careers and more money that can be shared and make our industry better. So I guess what kind of all of my money mindset comes down to is like, I think a lot of people get it wrong and they think that, studio owner must just want to make money, right? But for me, profit isn't the mission. I need to profit for many reasons, and profit doesn't just go to owner pay. But profit isn't the mission, but it's what allows the mission to continue, which is why it's so important for studios to be successful and for teachers to be a part of that so that we can continue the mission together. None of us are going to succeed alone, and none of us are going to be able to keep the lights on without money.
Yeah, it is the thing. I
Yeah.
mean, I think the proof is in the pudding, right? If it worked, it feels like we're just clinging to this idea that doesn't work, which is in our modern time, in the United States or the Western world, you shouldn't make money. And we're just clinging to it just at all costs.
Mhm.
And studios are closing down. Teachers are getting frustrated. Studio owners, I've met zero studio owners that are like, this is fine. I'm
Yeah.
going massively into debt and I feel fine about like,
Mhm.
yes, the idea of abundance and it'll just come to you and it just practically doesn't work. I think we would see it if it was working. studio owners would be happy and not need anything, and teachers would be happy showing up for what but that's not what's happening.
Hmm.
There's a gap. There's something that isn't working. And I think I heard it like the the goal is to get to go on a cool road trip. That's the fun part, but you need gasoline in the car, but you're not going to collect as much gasoline as you possibly can, but you still need some gasoline to get on the road trip.
Exactly.
But the point is not the gasoline. But
Yep.
yeah, I
Yep.
think without that mindset shift, we can't really accomplish very much at all. Are you working with studio owners on that mindset shift, or what are you running into when you're working with studio owners and their perspective on money?
Yeah, I definitely run into this a lot. I mean, there's a few, I think, conflicting conversations. Yoga should be more accessible, but how can a studio survive by just offering free yoga, right? And that's one of the hardest things is I actually, work with studios on like you can't just keep giving so much away for free because you can't give what you don't have. And I think what's really, really important about that shift is understanding that like a small business is meant to operate on an exchange of goods and services and money and labor. And I think we're kind of looking at maybe larger institutions that are failing us and we want them to give more and do better, but the reality is like, can we really look at a small business who is losing money or barely breaking even and expect them to give from an empty cup? So I guess what I tell studio owners now is you don't need to feel bad about not giving everything away for free. What you need to do is build a healthy, sustainable business first so that then you do have more to give. Because if you can become a profitable more successful business, then you can start to be one of those bigger institutions that's able to make the world a better place. But we have to get there first, or else you're going to burn out in the process. And then I think another kind of I thought about a couple of conflicting things that are said is like teachers wanting better pay, which I believe in, but like the business also needs to be able to make the right decisions so that we have the money to pay our teachers better, right? So it's like there's all this push and pull. So like I'm working with studio owners now to help them understand you need to make money so you can have a bigger impact on the world. You also need to be able to make money so that you can pay your teachers more. So sometimes we need to get rid of all the noise and we need to just keep keep our eye on the road and be like, I know as the leader of this business that this is the best decision to make and just hope that our communities and our teams trust us in the end. And that's the best thing. That's the best result for our industry.
Absolutely. I think that that is so important and a pivotal thing that's going to have to happen if
Yeah.
we want the yoga industry to move forward in a way where it continues to happen. I think
Yeah.
that there are things that indicate that we might just convert all over to like CrossFit and Pilates and
Yeah.
yoga is so profound and we want yoga to exist, but we live in a capitalistic system. So we need people like you being like, hey, y'all, you're going to need to look at your margins. Or
Yes.
I would love for you to talk about, I heard you talk about this before, but leadership in yoga, because that kind of correlates to this. And what is kind of missing as far as leadership from yoga studio owners?
Yeah. I think, a lot of I love that we're talking about this because this is actually like something I don't think I've talked about enough. Like even I talk about team and leadership with my studios a lot, but I think a lot of times it's very easy to talk about all the little things that we do to make a studio work. It's pricing and class schedule and hospitality, the member experience, all the things that I emphasize. But at the end of the day, all of that can only happen if there's strong studio leadership. And like going back to, kind of where we started here is like studio owners need to start being leaders and not just yoga teachers. So we need better standards for them, better education for them. And that all starts with like just I think really simple but hard leadership skills. If I were going to pick like the top things that I think make a really great studio leader or really any leader, I've learned that personal responsibility is like a huge part of this because the truth is like I don't do it. I did a lot of things wrong. I still don't do everything perfectly, but by owning my mistakes, taking responsibility, and then like not just apologizing, but actually being like, I'm going to do better and I'm going to do this differently now moving forward. That is what has allowed me to turn like failure into faster success. And I think an important leadership mindset is like, fail fast so you can figure out all the things not to do so that then you can succeed because you're really just using all of your mistakes as like data, not like, oh, I'm a terrible person and I'm not cut out for this. It's just we've got to go, a different direction. I think in my studio, like my team has seen me do this over and over and over again. And they've heard me say a million times, like, that didn't work. And we're going to go a different direction. Or I'm really sorry I messed up when I did that. And, I'm going to fix it. So, in that, I think that we've built a lot of trust. And that's why we work together really well. And that's why, like, our studio is basically unrecognizable now, like, compared to where it was 5 years ago. So at the end of the day, like we think leadership is like perfection and having all of the answers, but it's actually just taking responsibility for finding all of the right answers. So like it's super annoying, but every time I'm talking to someone about something and they're saying, "Oh, this is the problem," I have to go back to like, but is it the problem or do you need to like look at yourself first? And that's like a really hard and uncomfortable thing to do. And that kind of leads me to the next leadership, characteristic that I think is super important, which is clear communication and expectations. And I think that's where most of this leads. Like I have found in my conversations with people, the reason why your team isn't working is because you're not communicating expectations. The reason why that employee is frustrating is because you have not made it clear what they should be doing. So again, consistency and communication with your team is going to build trust. And, I talk about it with studios every day. Like a consistent class experience is what keeps students coming back, and a consistent workplace is what's going to keep your team coming back. Like people stay because the leadership is there. With that too, like I've learned that a lot of the conflicts that we face as leaders, like this isn't about bad people. Like people, the teachers and studio owners, like I don't see a lot of people here with bad intentions. I think it almost always boils down to like unclear expectations where like the teachers are feeling unsupported and then the studios are feeling also unsupported, or like, the teachers aren't committed, to the studio and the mission. Um, and I actually think neither side is just communicating clearly and setting expectations with each other. And that is, I think at the end of the day, probably the solution to every problem that there is, is if we were just really, really clear. And I know I'm like yapping on and on and on, but this is just bringing up so much for me to talk about. And I think that when I tell studio owners, set expectations, doesn't sound fun. That doesn't sound good. And there's often a lot of fear about like, well, I don't want to tell my teachers what to do, or, we've been doing it this way for 10 years. So if I change it, they're all going to quit and blah, blah, blah. But I actually think that if we're building careers and we're in these true like professional communities, not like these families and friend groups, but this is a true place where we create careers, then like standards are a necessary part of that. Like having a professional environment to work in, that means there's accountability, but there's respect, there's healthy boundaries, there's a shared mission. And if all of that's in place, then now we can actually create real careers. So I've just seen with myself and again with other studios that when we create standards and we communicate them, the teachers actually love it and they actually thrive, right? It's just we need to create them and we need to communicate them. We need to give feedback. We need to have policies in place and we all need to be professional. And my team, other teams, they love when a studio owner steps up to empower them to be a better teacher, to fill their classes, to build a community that actually matters. But I think we're trying to work alone rather than coming together to realize that like if we all had this set of shared standards and expectations, it would actually benefit all of us if we did that. So that's a long answer. I mean, I could keep going on all day, but I think in the end we need to support our team and develop our teams, and that they're going to appreciate if we do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just ask you more follow-up questions so we can keep talking about this because it's
Yeah.
important. Because it is really interesting that we are building communities based around somebody being a great yoga teacher and then just gathering their friends. And of course, we don't have leadership. And I mostly work with people who are leaving tech jobs or things like that. And then they come into the yoga world and they're like, what is happening here, y'all? This is crazy. There's a lot of drama that, like, I've heard that a lot, that there's a lot of interpersonal drama that's really surprising when you've collected all these people who deeply care about helping people and are pretty self-aware and are kind people. But there's so much interpersonal drama in yoga studios that I hear about. And I think it's because, from what I'm hearing from my software engineer clients, it's not the same, everything you just said. There's not a leader that has leadership skills like personal responsibility, and there's not standards that are being set to mitigate personal drama. Like, wait, I didn't get paid enough, for I worked longer than I should have, or all these things. But if there were standards, then this wouldn't happen. Is that something that you see? Are you seeing studio owners being capable of leadership, or are these the wrong people?
I truly believe anybody is capable of leadership. It's a skill set that can be
Yeah.
learned. I think maybe our environments and our cultures just aren't there yet. And it takes sometimes a little bit of like ripping off the band-aid to get there. One of the things about the drama and the things that happen is I mentioned this a little bit, but like I do think that a lot of studios are kind of operated like a family and like a friend group. And at the end of the day, I love all of my people, but I used to do this, you know, it was like these were all my best friends and that was like the priority, but that meant that like I couldn't communicate, I couldn't run my business the way it needed to be run. And then there was like this weird drama that also had this career and money layer to it, and that's like so messy. What we actually need to do is run our studios like a professional community, because that's what it deserves to be, so that it runs effectively and people can have careers. Likewise, the owners need to cultivate the right culture for their studio to be a professional community, and the teachers need to respect the workplace as a professional community. So I think that's probably a bit of the drama piece that
Yeah.
you're talking about.
And I think there's a lack of clarity on what it would look like to have that. I feel like I have a unique experience in that I worked for a place that had something like 18 locations, and their ship was run real tight. And there was very clear expectations, and it was very, we had managers that we reported to, and it was run really well in New York City. And it was, from the receiving end as a teacher, it was super relaxing. I knew how much I was getting paid. I knew what I had to do. I knew what time I should show up. And what it did is it gave me all this freedom to be a really great teacher, because I just came, taught the class, and then left without
Yep.
being standing in the lobby, having these conversations that are fun friend conversations comboed up with, wait, did you pay me for last week's blah, 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 blah. Like, it doesn't work. It's really stressful. And it's why I see yoga teachers quitting and why I see yoga studios closing. I don't think it works. I think you have a really clear understanding of your thought process around what is the job of the studio and what is the job of the teacher. So can you talk us through that?
Yeah, this is, I think, where we started to go wrong. If I could take a guess at like, where did we go wrong? It's
Yeah.
this. Like, we have blurred that responsibility. And this is where there's like that tension between studios and teachers. I don't know when it happened. Like, maybe I wasn't even around yet, but at some point we started valuing more paying teachers as contractors and expecting them to build their own business. Now, we could talk for so long about so many things, like the reason why the pay structures that way are bad, the reason why having contractors doesn't work. Like, I could talk about this all day, but for the purpose of this conversation, I'll just keep it to the fact that if this teacher is expected to also run and build their own business, that isn't a studio, right? Like, that's not a studio and teacher relationship that's going to work. The studio's job is to get the students there, and the teacher's job is to deliver a class experience that the students want to keep coming back to over and over and over again. So, like, if we broke that down a little more, the studio's responsibility is it takes a lot to build a brand and to build a reputation and then market and create the demand, get people in the door in the first place, because marketing doesn't actually mean people are going to walk through the door. So we do so much work at Radiance Yoga to make sure that all of the leads who are raising their hands are actually supported into booking their first class. And then we fill the classes and we build all the systems and we create this amazing member experience. We give our teachers a ton of training and resources so that they can easily deliver a great experience, even when the room is full with lots of people. And we support our teachers. But then the teacher's responsibility, I do not believe, is to fill the room. And that's why I don't pay teachers based off of performance, because every class on my schedule is important no matter what time it is. If it's the middle of the day and it's a 5 student class, or it's, the peak class time and the class is full, every class is important. So I don't care that the teacher isn't filling the room with students. I just need them to create the experience that they want to keep coming back to. So I think when teachers feel responsible for filling their classes, they also start to burn out. And at the same time, the studio owner is burning out. Everyone's just burning out and it's not going to work. So, as a studio owner, I don't expect the teachers to build the business. That's just going to result in everybody getting frustrated. The way that I think about it instead is actually like a relay race where, like, the marketing creates that first visit. And then the great classes that our teachers lead make people come back for the second. And then the community that's cultivated through all of these things that we do, that's what gets someone to class 100, right? And beyond. So this is something where everybody owns a part of the journey. Nobody owns all of it. And my team is very clear on these roles and what we do. And I think that's why, we're not burnt out and it's working.
I love that. That makes
Yeah.
so much sense to me. So much sense to me. And it's super missing. I hear it all the time. I hear some version of it's the teacher's job to fill their room, blah, 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 blah. And then what I see and who comes to me is people who say, well, hey, I've been running my own business for 3 years. How about I run my own business and actually make a livable wage? And I'm like, cool, I'll help you do that. But
Right.
we love our studios and we love being part of them. And they're of course, like anybody listening to this has some extreme investment in a yoga studio, I would bet, because they're the thing that changed our lives. So we want the studio to work. And as somebody who's run businesses for my whole adult life, I've seen that every time. You have to have a role. I was coaching somebody through the other day hiring, and she was saying, I run this yoga events company and I want to hire people, but I'm scared that they're going to steal my business and
Mm,
that they're going to go to the event and teach the event. And then they're going to go and get the lead and get the phone number and then start running the event without me. And my reaction to that is what you just said, everyone needs to have a role. So if you're hiring people who are hungry to run a yoga events company, that might be the wrong person for the job, because now you have two competing people trying to do the same thing. Whereas you could hire somebody, there's tons of people out in the world who just want to teach a great yoga class, and they really, really, really want somebody else to do the marketing. And they really, really, really want somebody else to be the leader. And they just want to teach. So I was saying, you're in collaboration with these people, and make sure you're collaborating with the right people that don't want your role, and that have all these skills that are not your skills and that can do something else. So I think it's so important what you're saying, that everyone has a distinct role and that they're able to play into that role, and that teachers are not required to fill their classes or market or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I mean, I heard you say something so important there where you were like, then the teacher feels like I've been running my own business for 3 years, so I may as well just go run my own business. And I think that that decision is like perpetuating our issue where just, more great teachers are opening studios without the intention of actually running a business, right? They just got so burnt out and frustrated being the teacher running their own business that they said, well, I may as well run my own business. And that decision's being made out of frustration, not actual business desire.
Mhm.
And I agree with that. I think there's people who should and want to own businesses and they should do that. But most of the people on my team want to be employed, because
Yeah.
they want to show up and teach a great yoga class and connect with their students. They don't want to do sales at the front desk. They don't want to do marketing. They don't want to post on Instagram every day. And I've had experiences with both types of teachers, and I completely support and love the teachers that want to do their own thing. And I will support them and cheer for them when they go off and do that. But I do think, there's I don't know, that just really made me think about like, oh, that's what's happening. That's why really great yoga teachers all of a sudden decide to open a studio because they're just frustrated with the experience that they've had prior. So they figure I may as well do this myself.
Yeah.
But maybe we don't know what we're signing up for when we do that.
Or it's like, and the opposite problem is that you have all these people more like me. I'm completely unemployable, like you said. Like I'm like you can't employ me.
Yeah.
I like walk in to try to do somebody else's mission, and I like go up in flames as I walk through the door. Like it's not a thing. I need to be the business owner. So I think the opposite problem is true, that there's people who really should be running their own thing that are able to slip through the cracks and work at these studios and kind of do their own thing, and they're teaching their own kind of class, and they have no leadership. So they're able to do that for 2 years, but it's like you're on the fence. It's not really, and then those people aren't making any money because they're kind of on the fence and nobody's marketing anything, and it doesn't work for them. But it'd be great if somebody was saying, hey, you're unemployable. You should figure out how to be an entrepreneur. Like you shouldn't
Yes.
be here. You're not the kind of person who wants to be part of this team and work under our brand. I think I've heard you talk about that aspect of building of leadership, and I think that's really important around building a brand, because there are all those teachers like me and all the people that I work with. Also, to say, the people in my circle, we all love our studios and we all wish we could still be part of them, but it doesn't make sense because the leadership in it often isn't good enough. Of
Mhm.
course, there's a lot of people who have so much resistance to teaching to a format, or teaching the way the owner asks you to teach, or teaching under a brand. They just want to do their own thing. That's so, so prevalent. And for me, I'm like, great, go do your own thing. Lead retreats that are linked to the chakras and your experience with Peruvian culture. Go for it. Like, if that's what
Yep.
you want to do it. But talk about how you see the studio's job building a brand, and how the teacher effectively fits under that.
Yeah, that is such a good question. I really operate my studio under this whole philosophy that it is a studio ecosystem of teachers and the owners and all the team members that need to operate together to build a strong studio culture, because it's really not sustainable for anyone in our industry, even the students. But, then some of that's going to happen where students just love and follow one teacher, and that is fine. But at the end of the day, if we start with why we're all really here, which is for our students and the impact, what we want to bring to people, the change we want to create, for people to really change their lives with yoga, it often means like practicing consistently, right? We all know that as yoga practitioners. We need to come every week, multiple times a week. We need to be committed to this for a period of time to really see the change in our lives. So if a student is just following a teacher, and a teacher can only teach so many classes a week, and maybe that teacher is teaching all over the place, and all of those places aren't accessible to that student, it's going to create a fragmented and inconsistent practice that just doesn't work. So at the end of the day, it's not even delivering to our students what we intend to deliver them. But if we operate as a studio together, a studio culture where students are obsessed with their studio, what their studio offers in their brand, now we can create something where a membership is accessible, because you can get an unlimited membership for the right price so that you can practice consistently and you can get results. Now, the most important piece of a studio brand, and a lot of studios aren't doing this because they are just letting their teachers teach whatever they want to teach, is creating a consistent class experience. And the big problem with that is if you're not delivering a consistent class experience, it creates the first thing I talked about, where students are only going to follow teachers. They're not going to trust their studio. So I'm not saying that everybody needs to define like only 5 key classes, core classes, and everyone has to teach these cookie cutter classes. That's not how we do it at Radiance, but each of our classes has an expectation for some key characteristics of what you're going to teach. And it's going to be consistent enough that if a student rearranged their entire day and packed their bag and drove to the studio to show up for power flow, they are going to get a power flow. They're not going to get a half restorative practice, like, not what they signed up for. And similarly, they're not going to show up to a gentle or a slow flow and then be scared to ever come back because it was way too hard, and like, their nervous system was just like effed up that day. And now it's even worse because they didn't get what they signed up for. So I think the big part of the brand is that consistent experience, so that the studios and the teachers together in our industry, we can start to build trust with our students again. Because what I saw happen years ago was this broken trust, that students wouldn't come to every class at a studio. They would only come to their favorite teacher's class. At my studio, most students now will say, I'll come to any class at this studio because I always know it's going to be great. And that came from developing our team. It came from setting standards, defining classes, giving feedback, and setting clear expectations that this is who we are and this is how we serve our students in a better way. I don't I don't have anything wrong with the teachers who don't want to teach to my brand standards. Like, I support them going elsewhere and teach, like you said, like, go teach somewhere else. That is totally fine. I am not taking this personally, but for the good of my studio, my community, my people, and the results I want to deliver, you're not a fit here if you don't want to, support the mission and our brand standards. And that to me was a massive turning point in the success of my studio, is when like I finally stepped up and said, like, I'm going to create these standards and I'm going to operate based off of our brand, not based off of what the teachers who aren't actually a good fit here, what they want to do, and I mean that with like so much love in my heart when I say that about the teachers that aren't a good fit. Like, that is totally fine, totally fine. But the studios aren't going to survive if we don't create a brand experience.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I love that so much. I think that's so important. Like, put it on a billboard somewhere.
Yes.
Because as somebody who is wildly opinionated and a huge leader and has a very specific way that I like to run my class, I also love being part of a group And I love being part of a studio and a community, but I want to be part of a group. I'm not coming to the studio to do more of what I do all day long, which is run my own business and make my own decisions. And I think other people have other versions of that. Like we have so much responsibility as parents or in our lives. And so if you're signing up to be part of somebody else's group, to me, it's really relieving, relaxing, enjoyable to hear that somebody has a system and somebody has a plan. And I get to come and be part of the group, not, oh, make more of my own decisions and should I do this? And why is my class not filling? This is really stressful. And but the owner is responsible for my pay and it doesn't feel fair. And like I can see how this creates such a, it's just sitting on the fence when it's important if you're part of a group to be part of a group. But I think there's a ton of pushback because we've had such a culture of something. I don't know. Do you see this pushback from studio owners or teachers that they don't want to work under a brand like that?
Yeah, I've seen both sides push back. You know, the studio owners push back because they're afraid of their teachers. I'm not gonna lie. Because if they've been running a studio for so long where every teacher can name their own class and do their own thing and isn't held to any expectations, then they probably have teachers on their team who that's the way that they want to run things. Now, I have seen studio owners, though, who do start to roll out standards and they're surprised with the number of people on their team who are thankful that the studio owner is taking this new leadership role in steering the brand in a direction. I think I tell my studio owners there's always going to be naturally an amount of people who might fall off of your team when you start to change things. And that's just because you're not aligned. It doesn't mean because you're doing something wrong or because it's anything personal. Those teachers I've had when I first rolled out my first signature class, I did lose a teacher who didn't want to be told how to teach. You know, she called it cookie cutter. She called it unauthentic, you know, whatever. I didn't take, and maybe I was a little upset about it because it was like the first time I tried to do it. But now looking back, I'm like, who cares? Like that wasn't personal. That was a decision I needed to make for Radiance. And now look where it is today. And it's okay that that teacher wasn't aligned. So I've seen it on both ends where yes, like a teacher doesn't align. That's just got to be accepted. And I've seen studio owners who don't want to do it because they're afraid of that fallout. However, you know, I don't have scientific data on this, but there is a much larger percentage of teachers that I think respond with enthusiasm when a studio owner starts to roll out like real standards and expectations. As long
Absolutely.
as there's support that follows up with that. You know what I mean? Like, we can't just set expectations and be like, you're on your own to do this. It's like we set expectations and we're going to provide you the continuing education and the feedback and all the tools and resources you need to be successful with this. And like, you know, at the end of the day, everyone wants to feel successful. So if as the studio owner, you're supporting your teachers for them to succeed, they're going to be grateful for that. And that's what creates an amazing studio.
Oh, yeah. I think that that's really important. I have seen the version where there's standards and no support for the standards, which is really frustrating because you don't know how to deliver them. So, what do you do at Radiance as far as feedback or continuing education? What do you provide to the team?
So we started rolling this out slowly, like with one class at a time. I would say like we found the biggest issue was like our power flow. Is some teachers had no aspect of flow. You know, they weren't teaching sun salutations and others did. And we needed to just choose, you know, the direction of what we were doing with this. So it started really simple with like we defined a Word document power flow format. It didn't say what poses you had to teach, what themes you had to teach. It just was a format to make sure you're hitting like sun salutations and the standing vinyasa and you're following something consistent. We rolled it out one class at a time. We offered the opportunity at the time to get together as a team and practice together and take each other's classes. And we just really started this culture of feedback. And for all of us to be successful, we're all going to have to be open-minded to feedback. And that's just kind of weaved into everything we do now. Now, fast forward to today, and I do have a full-time lead teacher on my team. So all of our classes, have these really still just Google documents that outline this is the format. This is maybe a sample class of what this could look like. We even started teaching like the signature class in our YTT. So students who graduate from our YTT, they know how to teach our signature power flow. So like we're really setting the standards starting in YTT. Then when a teacher starts teaching, whether they came from our YTT or not, we have what we call bridge trainings. So each teacher has the opportunity to learn each of our class formats, and our lead teacher will work with them, support them, and develop them into teaching the formats that they want to learn. And we just, my lead teacher will meet with teachers every quarter, check in on goals, give them feedback, and that's just a normal part of our culture now.
Yes. Yay. I can just hear some of the people listening to this just getting enthusiastic
Yeah.
because I hear every day, all day, that teachers feel unsupported on the path and feel like they need more feedback or more structure. And that's that. You created that for them. I think it benefits everyone. It benefits the teachers. It benefits the brand you build, and it benefits the students because, like you said, I've been that student a cajillion times where I go to a restorative and I'm in the middle of my 10th chaturanga. I think, why am I doing a chaturanga right now? There's no
Yep.
standards here. So I think that is so important. What are you seeing as the impact on the teachers? Like, what do you see as everything you've built as far as the benefit to teachers?
Well, I think you mean in terms of like the signature classes, or just
Yeah,
in general, everything?
yeah.
Um, I think that, something that's so interesting is studio owners often think like, oh, I don't want to give that teacher feedback. Like, especially if it's like a
Oh,
teacher who's been teaching longer than you, or, comes from these backgrounds that are way bigger than where we came from. And it's like, some teachers are going to meet you with like, well, who do you think you are giving me feedback? And honestly, if that's the case, they're a red flag and they're not going to be on
yeah.
my team anymore, right? Because what actually is surprising is I can think of several people who have said something along the lines of they've joined my team and then they've said, wow, this is when they've been given feedback, they say, wow, this is so refreshing. I haven't been given feedback on one of my classes in years. And that to me is a green flag, because now that's telling me that teacher wants to grow. That teacher isn't here for themselves just to teach the class that they love. They're here because they genuinely want to make sure that the end product is giving to their students, right? And because we don't know, as a teacher, we think we're teaching the best thing in the world, but it's not landing with our students, and you need an outside perspective to help you improve. So yeah, I mean, for me, I think anyone who's still on my team, they must really appreciate this. Otherwise, they'd be gone. And I think that they appreciate that this education is built in. It's considered a perk on our team, where like they're not paying for this. We just rolled out a public yoga sculpt training that teachers can take, and they have to pay for it. But our team, the second that comes out, they just have access to it. So they're seeing this as a benefit. I invest a lot of money in their continuing education outside of our studio. And I think at the end of the day, they appreciate it and feel like this studio is going the extra mile for me. I'm becoming a better teacher. And most of these people are like intrinsically motivated by personal growth. So like the fact that that's being provided to them is something they love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something that you're highlighting, I think, about good leadership that is you choose your people. Like, we're building communities, and I think there's something missing where everyone thinks they need to make sure everybody is happy. And I think a good business and good leadership has a point of view, and it says these kind of teachers are a great fit And it's okay if you're not a great fit because this is a specific community. And I think that that's really missing as far as leadership for studio owners because they're trying, the intention, of course, is good to be kind and open. But when you're kind and open and try to serve everyone, you might have to close the doors to your business. So, what are you seeing as things that studio owners need the most? What are all the shifts that you see that studio owners, if they make these shifts, it helps the whole yoga industry?
Well, I think we can't be people pleasers anymore. I mean, that was my first hardest lesson. Like, I had to go to years of therapy over this. Like, I'm a chronic people pleaser. And if I was going to run a successful studio, I couldn't people please. I know there's different quotes about this, but it's like the thing where, like, if you try to attract everybody, you're going to attract nobody. Like, you have to be willing to be something, to be a brand that only a certain amount of people want to be a part of. And that means other people don't want to be a part of it. So really standing in that, deciding what your mission is. And rather than just offering every type of yoga and saying yes to everybody and everything they want to do, now I have these things I can use to make a decision. If someone contacts me and they're a great teacher and they want to teach this special type of class, I don't agonize over it. I just say, no, that's not what we do here. That's okay. So I think, putting an end to the people pleasing and defining who you are is not only going to make your team and your brand stronger, but it's going to lift so much weight off of you and the millions of decisions that you have to make every day because you have a clearer lens to run things through. That's probably the most important thing because that trickles down to everything else. Now you're making decisions on what the business needs to do. So that leads to creating the consistent experience and the consistent expectations of your team. It's like, this is our sub policy. If you don't like it, you don't have to stay here. And again, I mean that with all the kindness in my heart, but like, this is what works for us. So, you have to do this. So I think it all comes back to that consistency piece. Define who you are and be proud of that and confident in that and make some real business decisions that don't just serve you, because at the end of the day, they keep your doors open and they create careers and then they create students that love the practice and everybody in our industry wins.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Tell us a little bit more about what you do with American Yoga Council now.
Yeah, so I work with American Yoga Council. I'm the creator and the lead coach of their studio business accelerator. So we created this 12-week program, and studio owners go through week by week in this online course, but also meet together as a group, working through the content together, which is amazing because, like, I've never been in a room with just a bunch of studio owners that are all relating on the same things, working on the same things, because it can be a pretty lonely job, right? Because these are very small businesses. So we work together in these small cohorts through the accelerator, and I also coach some of them one-on-one. And we're in our second cohort right now this year, and it's just going incredibly. Studios that have gone through it within a couple months, they've doubled their membership, they've increased their revenue by 50%. And basically, I'm giving people the exact resources and scripts and everything that we use at my studio and just teaching them how to apply it to theirs. It has just been so fun. It's where I'm spending most of my time right now. And I just am so lit up by it. It's the best. And I think that if more studios can step into, something like the accelerator and step into more of a leadership role and run a better business, it's going to fix all of these things we've been talking about today.
Absolutely. That's so exciting. Do you have any stories that you can share of anybody who's been through the accelerator, like what happened before and what they're doing now?
One of the ones that first comes to mind is, I'll shout her out, Ashley from Yoga Loft Tucson in Arizona. She's super funny on Instagram too, by the way, so go follow her. She's hilarious. Her studio in Tucson was really gearing up for like the slow season of the summer. Is always very scared about what happens in the summer when people kind of like reverse snowbird and go away. She was in this accelerator in the spring. She was implementing our systems. I mean, everything from like little gifts that she gives first time students to their pricing, their intro offers, the process they follow with all of that. She rolled out an employee handbook and new standards. Her team responded to that super well. And then she ran an open house event, brought in a bunch of new leads, new intros, new members. And in June, a month where things usually get really, really scary, she had the best June they've ever had and felt like her summer was finally not going to be like a cash crunch and they were going to actually have a successful summer and enter the fall feeling really, really good. So that's one example of a studio that just had amazing member and revenue growth and also team growth, through the rollout of these processes. And yeah, it's awesome. I can't wait to go visit you and Ashley Tucson in Tucson, Ashley.
That's amazing because summer is notorious to be just a throwaway. Like it just sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for it to be such a great month is awesome. Okay, so you're in the second cohort for the Studio Accelerator. How many people have gone through the accelerator so far?
Yeah, so we had 15 in the first round that we did in the spring, and this summer we currently have 14 studios. So it's been awesome. It's been growing. We're planning on having more like 30 in the fall cohort, and yeah.
It sounds like, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer because there are so many studios who could really, really benefit from what you're doing. I think they know that. So that doesn't surprise me. I also understand it's pretty affordable still since it's new. What's the price?
Yeah, I feel like business coaching can run really expensive these days. I feel like I expect things to be like a minimum of $10,000, at least if you're signing up for like a good business coach, right? But I'm a good business coach, but we're not priced that high because we want to be accessible to studio owners. And we understand one of the main issues going on here is that studio owners don't have enough money. So we built the program based off of 3 tiers. And the first tier is you get the whole program plus all of the group coaching for less than $2,000. And you can also do that on a payment plan. The next tier, you get 4 one-on-one sessions with me or Andrew Tanner. So that one is, I think, $2,500 to $3,000. And then the final one, you get 12 one-on-one coaching sessions. So that's where we can really, work together one-on-one as you go through the program. And that one is priced closer to $7,000. But it's like the barrier to get in is $2,000 for most studios. So
Yeah, that is amazing. That is true. I will tell you, as somebody who invests in business coaching, usually it's closer to 10 grand. So
yeah, I am giving away so much for that $2,000. So studio owners, go check it out.
yeah, and if you keep filling those things, I bet you'll get to raise your prices. So it seems like if people would like this lower price and you're interested, now's a
Yep.
better time than later.
Yep. Come see us for the fall cohort.
Before I get your closing thoughts, I know that you believe that great teachers need great studios and great studios need great teachers. So can we circle back to the teachers and what you see as the future and the vision for teachers when studio owners are able to operate so well?
Yeah, I think there's always a few different types of yoga teachers and what they want. And a couple of these yoga teachers do want to work at a studio that supports them, whether it's their side hustle or it's a full-time career. So in both of those instances, if the studio can support them well, I think we're setting teachers up to be stronger leaders and community builders and coaches of their students so that at the end of the day, they're actually coaching their students to come back and to get results. And these teachers are now working in careers and environments where they can keep learning, there's open communication, there's supportive teammates. So now they can have a fun time showing up to be a part of that community, feeling supported. They can support each other, contribute to something bigger than just their one class, right? And really be a part of a mission. Yeah, I think that this is all happening at my studio. It's possible. And, together, better studios and great teachers are going to change the industry. So that's why we're here.
Yes, it's amazing. I think it's totally possible. I was part of it in New York City in the time that it was, and they were operating under a lot of the philosophies you've outlined. And as a very entrepreneurial driven individualistic person, it was so lovely to be in that ecosystem and be under a strong brand and be under strong leadership. And it worked. And I had the best pay I've ever had as a yoga teacher. So I think like everything you're doing is so awesome and so needed. And I think it'll change the yoga industry. And I'm so glad that you're getting to share this with studio owners now. So yay.
Yay.
Do you have any closing thoughts for us?
Yeah, I think that, thinking about everything we've just talked about, I just think studio owners need to embrace leadership and business ownership more than this bigger teaching role, right? That they thought that they were signing up for. And at the end of the day, it's our job to create a professional community and a workplace where our teachers can thrive and our students can thrive as well. Something I always say to teachers is it's not your job to be the star, it's your job to build the stage. And with that mindset, we will show up as better leaders and create better systems that support our teachers. Rather than saying, what's more valuable, a studio or a teacher, I think that we just start working together and we build an industry where now everybody wins. And thank you so much for having this conversation and letting me share all of that.
Of course. I think it's super important. Where can people find you?
Well, my studio is Radiance Yoga, and on Instagram, it's at radiance-yoga. We share our class formats at the Rad Yoga Method on Instagram. And then me personally, which is where you'll find more of my studio coaching content, is at Shannon McCasland Yoga on Instagram. And then, of course, American Yoga Council, because I'm doing a lot of work with them as well.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. And I'll put that in the show notes also if you want to see that typed out. Well, thank you so much. This has been really fun. Thank you for being part of it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Gift Led. If you would like an opportunity to connect with other yoga teachers and have live discussions about things like building confidence as a yoga teacher or how to build sustainable pay in your yoga career, or what does yoga philosophy say about our role as leaders, we have a group that meets the last Thursday of every month. It's intentionally small, and it's a chance for us to connect over Zoom and get to have discussions on these topics. I always teach a little bit so that you get a little information, but it's really heavily weighted towards getting to have a discussion as a group of yoga teachers. I know that the path to being a yoga teacher, especially when it's a meaningful part of your work life, can sometimes feel lonely. And that is why I created the Yoga Teacher Circle. If you're interested in this, it's currently still free to join. There's a link below. Please join us if you wish. Spots are always limited, so once they're full, they're full. But grab a spot for next month's discussion if it feels like it would be useful to you. Hope to see you there.